The Puck Portfolio with Andy MacNeil.
Hey, welcome to the Puck Portfolio. It is Monday, June 10th. The Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final is set for tonight. The Oilers, of course, dropped Game 1 by a score of 3-0, despite outshooting the Florida Panthers 32-18 in that game. And as Connor McDavid said after the game, maybe a bit of karma there from the hockey gods after the Oilers tied the record for the lowest shot total in a win in NHL playoff history in Game 6 against the Dallas Stars. But here to help me break it all down is Michael Leboff from the Action Network's Line Change podcast. Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, I guess that's a good way to look at it, right? The McDavid angle there. I thought that I saw the same thing everybody else did from Game 1. It sets up a classic handicapping conundrum, handicapping equation, if you will, which is do you buy into the fact that the Oilers showed really well and showed that they can skate with the Panthers and replicate that effort, or at least come close to replicating that effort for Game 2 and beyond? Or do you look at it like the Panthers brought their D game, got the win, and now have more room to improve? It is fun to think about because we had this conversation with the Rangers and Panthers quite a bit, right? Like the Rangers won the first 2 out of the first 3 games, and we thought, wow, like there's actually room for the Rangers to get better. But then because they kept getting dominated in terms of, ice tilt or whatever, or is it that the Panthers have just played really well and eventually the pucks will start going in? And obviously we know how that ended up, but it really does set up a fun kind of handicapping journey for us here for Game 2 and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. Currently, according to the Canada Sports Betting projection model, the Florida Panthers, a 65.6% chance of winning the Stanley Cup now that they've got a 1-0 series lead. That's a little bit lower than what you would expect, given that historically teams have gone on to win Game 1, have gone on to win the Stanley Cup around 60, or the series around 68% of the time. And that jumps to about 74% of the time when we're talking about the team with home ice advantage. But this is, in my opinion, a best-on-best matchup. I think Edmonton has some advantages, and we saw that in Game 1. But as you know, to your point, the Florida Panthers probably did play their worst game of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Edmonton Oilers carry play in future games in this series, but at the same time, I don't think we'll see his game as bad as that from the Florida Panthers. So huge missed opportunity for the Oilers, who I think are a plus 190 series underdog now, according to my model. They are plus 205 on the series line at NorthStar Bets. Of course, NorthStar is our sponsor. You can check them out via the link in the description below.
So you're showing like a shade of value on the Oilers there, right?
Yeah.
But rather than betting that, would you just bet the McDavid? Like if you did want to bet that, if you wanted to bet that edge, would you just bet McDavid to win the Conn Smythe at 3-1 at this point?
I think so at this point, yeah. And but I mean, I still think there's room for a Leon Draisaitl
I know
here too, and then that's
that,
the thing.
I know it becomes a scary situation. It's almost a if I feel like it's a situation where you'd feel stupid if you have this thought before game, before Game 2 and the Oilers come back, they win.
Yeah.
And McDavid skates off with a Conn Smythe, and you're sitting there thinking, like, I got way too cute with it. Like, there's no way that they weren't going to give it to McDavid, but there is, like, because if Draisaitl has a hat trick in Game 2, like I wouldn't even say that would put him above McDavid.
He's 16-1 right now at
I
NorthStar
know,
Bets.
I know.
So it's there's been a big adjustment. Obviously, you've got Bobrovsky. I think he, as good as Barkov has been in the playoffs, I think there's so many Panthers that are producing points or around the same amount of points. And, he's been great defensively and everything, but that performance by Bob pretty much, propelled him to the top of the conversation, I think. Right. So McDavid coming in at plus 275, Barkov at 3-1, Tkachuk at 5-1. I'd be surprised if Kachuk won it at this point, if we're being honest. But Draisaitl, I still think he could, find a
Yeah.
way if McDavid doesn't produce like he has in past series, and Draisaitl, really picks it up and scores maybe like he did early in the playoffs, which seems unlikely. It's tough, but yeah, I do think that if you're really committed to the bid here and back in the Oilers, then it's in all likelihood they win, and Connor McDavid will skate away with the Conn Smythe Trophy.
Yeah. The Panther side is really tough for me, right? Like I have this parlay open since the Genesis Open in February where I put through the Oilers on top of Hideki Matsuyama, and I've just been trying to plan my way out of it if I had to, and I was like, I really hope that the Panthers have like a runaway Conn Smythe winner by game 3 if it looks like it's going to go that way, and maybe I can get like odds, it's something like -110 on Florida to win the series by root of a Conn Smythe, and find a way to make a good bet turn into 2 losing bets. But I think you said Bob is there. We're at a point now with the Panthers where I think one more big game for Verhaeghe puts him like almost up there
Yeah.
with them. One more big game from Barkov maybe puts him neck and neck with Bob. Kachuk, I guess he need to do something, but the
We
Oilers
know
side
how
is so
people we
simpler.
know how lazy people are, though,
I
at the end of the
know.
day,
That's the
right? And
thing,
that's
right?
that's
Yeah.
what always kind of we spend all this time, like you said, getting so cute with everything,
I
and
know.
at the end of the day, it's somebody's going to spend what a few minutes really
Yeah.
considering their weighing their options, and they're probably going to make the easy choice, especially now with all the
Right. That shutout was just sensational. So
yeah. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting nonetheless, and realistically, there are at least a handful of players that are in contention. I've seen some people though like rate Evan Bouchard as the top pick for the Edmonton
yeah.
Oilers, and I mean he's been great, but like let's get
Yeah.
real here. He's
Exactly.
not going to win it. So
I think it's so funny when people do that because you'll see articles written like the real Conn Smythe winner is Bouchard or something. We're like, okay, but we live in reality and we know how reality works, right? Like maybe by the numbers and wins above replacement or expected like whatever however game score you want to look at it, but
yeah.
we know how it works, right? Like we know who if Evan Bouchard sets all kinds of records and scores the game-winning goal in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, he's still going to lose the Conn Smythe to Connor McDavid. It's just how these people vote. So
Yeah. So Edmonton obviously getting shut out in game number 1. Saw some stuff post game from the Oilers. Uh, and in the days since, it sounds like they're pretty confident that they're gonna capitalize on their chances this time around, and I think they've got good reason to be confident in that. They've responded well after losses. They're 5-1 in this postseason following a loss. They've scored an average of 4.3 goals per game in those games, and I mean, it's going to be tough to keep the Oilers off the board. And I think as good as Florida's penalty kill has been, they have only allowed 2 power play goals since Game 5 of the first round. So lots to talk about Edmonton killing off 30 penalties in a row. Florida's been arguably just as good, and I still think Edmonton's power play though can be a lot better than they were in game number 1. One thing that really jumped out to me, I think Evan Bouchard and Matthias Ekholm, deserve all the praise in the world for how they played in game 1, for how they played in this playoff. But I don't think it's a good thing that they were, the guys taking all the shots for Edmonton in game number 1. They took 26 of the Oilers' 70 shot attempts in the game. Um, According to Natural Stat Trick, only 2 rebounds were created off of those shot attempts. One high danger chance out of those 26 shot attempts. 26 was more than McDavid, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Draisaitl, and Hyman combined, who had 23 shot attempts combined. So yeah, the other thing I think that just kind of backs this up is that the 4 players that I just mentioned, the forwards, they all finished with more expected goals despite having fewer shot attempts than the defenseman, and it's pretty clear why, right? Like these guys are taking shots from far out, and I think you'd like to see Edmonton sacrifice some of those looks and try to get in tight a little
Yeah.
bit more, because it wasn't working as far as creating rebounds and whatnot. And I think what was working as far as getting their best chances was when they when they got in tight and got those looks around the net, right? So
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I actually think, to your point too, I think we talking about this on Line Change a bit. Yeah, it's the Stanley Cup Final, so having some fun bets. You're not going to get yourself in trouble where you're betting first goal scorers right every night in an 82 game season for 32 teams. But when it's in a more controlled environment like this, where there's only 6 games left, I think have some fun. And I actually like Ekholm in that market at 50-1 because of what you were saying. Like, they are pumping rubber to the net. And the other thing is he's usually out there with the big dogs, and those guys track so much space. They open up some lanes for someone like Ekholm to be the trailer. So I think at 50-1, he's always worth a shot. And on the power plays, the one note that I'll make, like, the Panthers deserve so much credit for keeping Edmonton off the board for this crazy streak they're on, considering the power plays they've played against, right? Tampa,
yeah,
um, I
yeah,
mean, the Bruins
three out of the
weren't.
top
Yeah,
9.
it's incredible. Um, but the one thing I will say is what we saw against the Rangers was a Rangers power play really, really struggling to find anything against the Panthers. The Panthers did such a good job of just stifling them as early as they could in terms of, like, the point of attack. The Oilers did come close. Like, I would say that they look to be knocking a little bit more than the Rangers did. So it leads me into, I know we'll talk about bets, but I do think that the Oilers once again are a pretty good bet here, considering how they looked in all facets of the game, not just the power play. But I'm gonna take the bait here and continue to go into the
Yeah,
Oilers.
yeah, you're not alone. I mean, the betting market has moved pretty substantially, I guess. You look at some sports books; they opened with the Oilers as low as plus 130 ish, following the loss in Game 1. Now NorthStar Bets down to I believe plus 109 right now currently. Um, Plus 108. The Florida Panthers minus 125. The Panthers closed up around the minus 140 range in game number 1. So yeah, like a lot of bettors showing the Oilers some love here, and apparently sharp and square bettors both on the Oilers here, because sports books are have moved this quite a bit. I mean, Edmonton was still available at in the plus 120 range earlier this morning. um, I was on the over in game 1. I thought that, I still think that these games are going to be more high scoring than people would think. I think Florida's, played in a lot of low scoring games, but Edmonton is a team that, regularly scores 3 goals or more. And I don't think that's necessarily going to change in these playoffs. Florida still, I think we saw it in game 1. They haven't played a team like Edmonton yet. And it's, pretty outrageous that the Oilers were kept off the board. I just don't know if I want to go back to it at this point in the season. It's one of those things, especially with the team trends. Panthers have been an under team, like I said. The Oilers over their last 10 games, they've been an under team as well. Yeah, so what's the Edmonton 7-2-1 to the under in their last 10 games. Panthers 9-1 to the under in their last 10. So a lot of things pointing away from this, and I guess at this point I'd like a little more value. So yeah, I'm kind of stumped on this one, to be honest. I did bet Draisaitl over 2.5 shots. It was available at NorthStar earlier, minus 114 at that point, but it's all the way up in the high minus 130s now.
Yep.
Do you have anything that you liked for tonight's game, Mike?
Yeah, so I still think that you can bet the Oilers at this price. Like, I really do. I think plus 110 is fine or better. I also want to keep banging the drum for, rather than just betting Draisaitl like anytime goal scorer. If you look at who scored for the Panthers, it was Luosterainen, Evan Rodriguez, and Verhaeghe. And yeah, Verhaeghe is certainly a threat to lead the series in goals. But the other two I wouldn't worry too much about. And it's only 1 goal spread across 3 different players. So I still like Draisaitl in that market. He's now lengthened to plus 650 I saw out there. you might be able to find something better. But anything in that range, I still think is worth a bet because it does look a way to get some money in on Leon having a um, big series, big game coming up. I do think that that's coming. It does just maybe it's a little more gut feel than anything else, but the way that he's been looking and he like has like you said he early on monster production, but I feel like his production has slowed down, but his level and his form is still as high as they were. So I still like Leon here in that market. I like that Ekholm 50-1 punt as a fun one. So Oilers, Draisaitl lead the series in goals and Ekholm to score first at 50. Or maybe even, you could split the stake. That I would advise a small stake on those kind of bets, obviously.
Yeah.
And let's say it's a $5 bet, $2.50 on Ekholm to score first, $2.50 on Ekholm to score the last goal. That way you can have both of those legs alive because he will be out there if the Oilers are up and there's an empty net.
Yeah. So to my point about Draisaitl, I mean he's cooled off a lot, obviously. 2 goals in his last 10 games, but like you said, like Verhaeghe, he's always a threat, and he's still live in that market to lead the series in goals. Was 4-1, I believe, or 6-1, I think you said before the Cup final started.
Yep.
But he's registered 3 or more shots in 5 out of his last 8 games, 13 out of 19 games this postseason. So that's why I bet him to go over 2.5 shots at that price. But I also like Sam Bennett as an anytime goal scorer. Not going to be a big stake here. Quarter unit bet on Sam Bennett at plus 320 odds. You talked about Verhaeghe. He's got 4 goals in his last 10 games. He leads the Panthers in the playoffs, 10 goals. But Bennett's been really good since coming back from injury. We knew he would be good in the playoffs. He's got 5 goals in his last 10 games and 6 in his last 12. He's plus 320 at NorthStar Bets. But of course, shop around because you might find something better than 4-1 out there if you look hard enough. But yeah, I think I still like him. I do at plus 320, and those are pretty widely available odds. I think he's going to be around the net. He does get some power play time, even though he's not on the top unit. And yeah, that's pretty much all I'm on tonight, I think, Mike.
That's all.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no, I like it. I mean, bet it to your point. Like, I think Bennett is a guy you'd also want to target, and maybe it's hindsight because he scored 2 against the Rangers. But if you want to look even for a bigger price, you can play him in that last goal scorer market because he seems to be he turns into Mike Bossy when the net is empty on the other
Yeah,
side. So,
absolutely. And he's a guy that's going to be on the ice
yeah,
in those
exactly.
key
And he's a
moments.
pressure player, loves to and he's very good at turning pucks over with his physicality. So I like that.
For sure. Before we let you go, you spent last week covering the was it World Cricket Championship,
The Cricket World Cup, yeah, T20
Cricket World Cup.
Yeah.
How was that experience? Would you like to do that again? You gonna follow along with cricket a little more closely now that you got a firsthand look?
Oh yeah, and I've been into cricket for a little bit, and I feel very grateful to have the chance to cover it. I mean, the World Cup was on Long Island, a bunch of the games. Canada played got a famous win against Ireland on Long Island, so that was great. But then we saw India versus Pakistan, which is one of the craziest sports rivalries in the world. And would be likely the most watched single game of any sport this year.
Yeah,
They say it's usually around 600, between 400 and 600 million people watch
crazy.
that game. I mean, you think about 1.3 billion people in India alone, and Pakistan's a pretty big country. They both are obsessed with cricket, and consider that the Super Bowl attracts an audience of 125 million. So it really puts it into perspective. The press box I was in was crazy, so much fun. And I'd urge you to get into it.
Yeah, well, I don't have to go far. As I sent you a pic over the weekend. I was over at the local soccer field kicking the ball around with my boy, and the boys came and they set up a game in like 5 minutes
Amazing.
and
Yeah,
started
they're
playing.
great.
Just pick up cricket.
Yep.
Pretty popular here in Western Canada, and yeah, maybe I'll get a chance to play one of these times. I think I used to be pretty good in the batter's box, so maybe I'll be all right.
Yeah. It looks easier. It really does look easy, which is, and I know it's not, but it does. You're watching it. You're just like, I think I could do that.
Yeah, for sure. It looks fun. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks for joining me. I know you got to get going. I've got to
Yep.
get going as well. We'll see you on the next show. Not sure
Yeah.
when exactly that is. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday. But we'll be back here to cover Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final, recap and everything that'll happen tonight in Game 2. Good luck with your bets and take care.